This summer marks exactly 10 years since Fenerbahce last lifted the Turkish Super Lig title, and President Ali Koç was willing to wait no longer for glory. Despite reaching a whopping 99 points, a club record total, head coach Ismail Kartal was given the boot out the door after his side were pipped to the league title by bitter rivals Galatasaray, which didn't go down so well with the board nor the fans. And I don't know if you know this, Fenerbahce and Galatasaray don't really like each other. Adding more context to this ruthless decision, Fenerbahce lost just one league game throughout the entire league season, which came back in November at home to Trabzonspor, in which they fell to a 3-2 defeat. Nevertheless, continuing with the theme of madness, Fenerbahce's board did what every other top club in Europe have done over the past decade when they want success on the pitch but are not willing to put a long-term plan in place, and that is to bring everyone's favourite head case back to management, Jose Mourinho. The legendary Portuguese coach has been chosen to lead Fenerbahce into the unknown. However, even the special one will have to pull off something truly special if Fenerbahce are to pip Okan Buruk's incredible Galatasaray side to the title this season. I'm Adam Scully from Football Continental, and let's take a look at how Jose Mourinho can pull off the impossible in Istanbul. Make sure to hit that like button and please do subscribe if you would like to see more of our content. So now, let's get into it. Now, I'm not one to reveal someone's secrets, but Jose Mourinho has proven himself to be somewhat of a high priest of pragmatism in the 21st century. On the pitch, the legendary coach has an unwavering devotion to order over chaos in the same way your granddad prefers record players over Spotify. And while many pundits cower at his conservative ways, they have served him well throughout his career, and it looks as though things won't change too much at his new club. Fenerbahce actually scored more goals than any other side in the Turkish Super Lig last season, 7 more than the eventual champions. However, it was their defensive record where they trailed their sworn enemy. So far, Fenerbahce have used a 4-3-3 out of possession under Mourinho, with the wingers dropping back as part of a 5-man midfield. The shape then looks like a 4-5-1 or a 4-1-4-1. However, this has left poor old Edin Dzeko on his own to press the opposition's two centre-halves, which is like a 16-year-old dog chasing a newborn pigeon. Thankfully, though, Mourinho has a number of other options up front. Yusuf En-Nesyri, who he just signed in this transfer window, and of course, everyone's favourite Twitter personality, Michy Batshuayi. What's really interesting, though, is just how narrow the wingers are when Fenerbahce are sitting in a medium to low block. Mourinho wants to cut off the middle of the pitch and uses his wingers to do this while the central midfielders push high and press alongside the centre forward. When this happens, the shape looks more like a 4-3-2-1 or the Christmas tree formation, as it's also known, with the two central midfielders being the two just behind the centre forward. Usually, this is Fred and Szymanski because of their energy in the middle of the park. It's difficult to get into the mind of such a tactical magician, but one theory as to why Mourinho pushes his wingers inside is because of the tendency in the modern game to play with inverted fullbacks in the build-up. Pep Guardiola, you will pay for your crimes. The wingers will follow the fullbacks inside, but it also gives them license to push out wide if that's where the fullbacks also go. When this happens, the two central midfielders who are pushing high next to the centre forward will just plop themselves right back next to the number 6 or holding midfielder. Fenerbahce have been hard to break down when defending in this rigid shape. However, some opposition teams have found a weakness in Mourinho's tactical arsenal, which is a little bit of pressing. An ancient Greek philosopher by the name of Ralph Rangnick once said, "A little bit of pressing is like a little bit of pregnant. Either you are pregnant or not." Unfortunately, Mourinho is not currently pregnant at Fenerbahce. Not that I'd want to see that anyway. Against Lugano in Switzerland, in a 7-goal thriller in the UEFA Champions League's second qualifying round, before they were dumped out by Lille a fortnight later, Lugano constantly found holes in Fenerbahce's press. This is because, for a successful press, the back line, the midfield, and the forward line must work in cohesion to squeeze the pitch and ensure there are as few gaps to play through as possible for the opposition. However, Fenerbahce's press so far has more holes than a golf course. Take a look at this example. Fenerbahce go to press, it's a half press or half pregnant, as Ralph Rangnick would say, and allows Lugano to easily play through it and move the ball into dangerous areas. The main reason for this is because the back line and certain players in midfield are way too deep, so afraid of getting pregnant that they choose celibacy. And this isn't just a pattern so far at Fenerbahce, this was a criticism of Mourinho's teams during his previous stints also. Looking at this example from all the way back in 2018, there are far too many gaps in Manchester United's press for Juventus to play through because the midfield, the back line, and the forward line haven't squeezed the pitch. If Fenerbahce want to have the most solid defence in the league, Jose Mourinho will need to pick a lane. Will they just sit back instead in a medium to low block and allow the opposition to play out? Or will they press as high up the pitch as possible to win the ball back as early as possible to possibly create goal scoring opportunities? If it's the latter, Mourinho certainly has the players to achieve this, with the likes of Fred, Szymanski, and Krunic all providing plenty of energy in the middle of the park, although he may need a more proactive striker than Edin Dzeko. Sorry, Grandad. Now, let's move on to another important area that Fenerbahce need to improve on if they are to pip Galatasaray to the league title this season. When you think of Mourinho, you certainly don't think of free-flowing attacking football. Quite the opposite, in fact. He has been criticised throughout his managerial career for putting shackles on some players, particularly in big games, and I don't know if you know this, he doesn't really give a toss about possession. The iconic figure once said, to have the ball is something that affects your self esteem. For some managers, I think it's more a question of PR and image. So I think it's fair to say that whether Fenerbahce have the ball or not, it doesn't really bother him. He cares more about what you do when you have it. So, what do Fenerbahce do when they have the ball? Well, firstly, let's take a look at the side's tactics in possession from last season when Ismail Kartal was in charge. Under Kartal, Fenerbahce played out from the back in a 4-2 shape with the fullbacks pushing up alongside the two midfielders, usually Fred and Ismail Yuksek. Meanwhile, the two centre-backs would stand alongside the goalkeeper, which is quite standard for a team when playing out from the back in this day and age, especially those that use a 4-2-3-1 formation. The biggest issue, though, was that Fenerbahce struggled to play through the middle of the pitch. This is mainly because of the double pivot's inability to receive the ball under pressure, particularly one man. 4 years ago, the greatest striker in the history of association football, Troy Deeney, once claimed that Fred was the weak link of Manchester United's midfield. This was because every time Watford would play Man United and Fred would receive the ball with his back to goal, he would pounce like an aggressive grizzly bear preying on a cute little beaver. Well, 4 years later, and nothing has really changed. Fred is like a Duracell bunny and can play neat and tidy passes in the middle of the park because, well, he's still a professional footballer. However, the Brazilian really struggles when playing with his back to goal under pressure. As a result, Cartal's side often had to play out to the fullbacks, and this is bad. Why? Well, when you play out from the back using the wide areas, it limits your passing options because there is literally a sideline next to you. When you play in the middle of the park, you have 360 degrees worth of passing options, but when you play out wide, these options are essentially halved, and you are far more vulnerable to being pressed by wild Troy Deeneys. Look at this example, for instance. The ball is played out to the fullback, the passing lanes inside are cut off, which forces him to play down the line as it is his only option. And as a professional footballer, he passes the ball out of play. Under Mourinho so far, things have generally stayed the same. They still build up in a 4-2 shape. However, once the ball is played, Mourinho looks to quickly adapt his build-up formation to a 3-1 shape. He does this by having one of the midfielders drop into the back line, having a three-man defensive line which allows the fullbacks to bomb high up the pitch. Then, Fenerbahce essentially have a back three and one midfielder in front of them ready to receive the ball. This is where the 3-1 shape comes into. However, there is a glaring issue with this again, and it's Fred. Here, Fenerbahce are in their 3-1 build-up shape, and the ball is played into Fred's feet. However, he doesn't just misplace a pass, he misplaces the entire ball as it rolls under his foot and he falls on his arse. Furthermore, the team's overall shape becomes a 3-1-6 when they're in the attacking phase. This has become somewhat of a staple for teams who don't want to play through the middle of the pitch because It's either too risky or they don't have the players to do so. So they prefer to push their fullbacks high, keep their wingers slightly out wide before inside to allow the fullbacks to push on, and then you can create wide overloads. This is what Mourinho was doing at Fenerbahce. Fenerbahce have done this really well so far, and with foxes in the box such as Dzeko, Batshuayi, and En Naziri, this could be a deadly tactic for the Turkish giants in the new season. Now, moving on to counterattacks. One of the absolute staples of any Jose Mourinho team is their ability and efficiency from counterattacks. They sit deep, soak up pressure, and kill teams on the break. His Real Madrid side from 2010 to 2013 were the perfect example of this. In fact, I'd even comfortably say that Real Madrid, under Jose Mourinho, were the best counter-attacking team in the history of football. Many people criticised Jose's conservative ways, but during the 2011-12 campaign, when his Real Madrid side toppled Pep Guardiola's boisterous Barcelona, they scored 121 goals in 38 matches, which is still a record in Spain today. Have that Pep and your inverted fullbacks. Although it did help that he had Cristiano Ronaldo, Angel Di Maria, Karim Benzema, and Mesut Ozil in the front line, not a 386-year-old Edin Dzeko. Fenerbahce have signed an upgrade in En Naziri, but even still, the Moroccan is not the most mobile striker we've ever seen. Nevertheless, there is still a very strong possibility that Jose Mourinho turns this Fenerbahce side into one of the best counter-attacking outfits in Turkey and potentially even in Europe. Alan Saint-Maximin, Dusan Tadic, Alan Saint-Maximin, Szymanski, Alan Saint-Maximin, Cengiz Under, and Alan Saint-Maximin could all prove to be very useful attacking weapons in Mourinho's counter-attacking arsenal. This is something that Fenerbahce didn't take advantage of enough last season. Why? Well, quite often Fred was given license to play the first ball to the forward line when counter-attacking, which is like giving Lewis Hamilton a go at flying a plane. Too many times counterattacks broke down because the first ball through the opposition went wayward or was incredibly misplaced, usually by Fred. When Real Madrid scored all those goals over a decade ago, they had Xabi Alonso and Mesut Ozil who could play these line-breaking, deadly through passes into the likes of Ronaldo, Di Maria, and Karim Benzema. Not Fred. Perhaps Jose should lean a little heavier on someone like a Dusan Tadic, who can play these perfectly weighted through balls into the likes of Alan Saint-Maximin, who can then work their magic and create something out of nothing. Turkish football is notoriously chaotic, as is Mourinho off the pitch. While many see this as a huge backward step in his career and as an acceptance of a decline of one of the greatest managers in football history, it could actually be a match made in heaven. I thought noodles on bread was the most hideous and satanic concoction ever created until I tried it. Turns out it's absolutely delicious. Maybe Mourinho and Fenerbahce could be the perfect noodle sandwich.